Good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. Good morning, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm very excited to be here today and to be talking about, as Rainer said, one of my great passions, and that is Africa, with all its potentials and resources. To realize, how do we realize the potential that it has? It's not a simple topic, and it's definitely an emotive one which I could speak to for hours, and I'll do my best to keep this talk short and simple. I'm sure everyone around the world watching this is an African expert, and I'm not sure that while most people do remember the scramble for Africa from 1844 to 1914, which saw the 13 European powers and the USA scramble for territory around Africa, people tend to forget that if we look forward to the map of 2000, all the African countries are now independent. However, looking closely, one sees that in actual fact, it still very much looks like the colonial map, and the true ethnical background is not reflected at all. Put bluntly, Africa is independent, but the countries are still colonial constructs, and tensions and spheres of influence still result from this. They dictate the continent, and they slow its development, and allow outside influences to decide the directions that Africa should rightly be taking itself. But let's give some credit to the continent. While it still has its challenges, since 2000, the GDP has grown from 1% to 2.9%. No small achievement when one considers that the Western GDPs have all generally shrunk in real terms. Per capita GDPs too. While growth has been very varied, from a couple of $100 in poorer countries to 13,500 in the Seychelles, due to the explosion of tourism. Generally, the growth figure has been higher than international norms, and this is mostly driven by commodities and the offshore industry. The figures show also that lifespan, lifestyle, and quality of life for Africans have grown significantly in relation to the rest of the world over the last 15 years. It's worth noting that while we still are ahead of where we are, most African countries have actually gone backwards and are now behind where they were in 2009 because of the commodities crunch. This is, however, not necessarily a bad thing, as this highlighted the Dutch problem. That means economies that were too focused on one industry, and highlighted the need to diversify our economies and to rather grow from previously economies which are raw materials and commodities driven. And we now find we're on a much better path, with things like manufacturing now making up 9% of the total of African economy, agricultural 12%, finance 6%, and wholesale retail 15%. These are good developments, but they need to be sped up. So what do we need to do to increase this? The answer for me is very simple. It lies in interregional trade. If you've heard me talk about it before, you'll see I very often emphasize the physical size of Africa. Africa, where China, India, North America, and Europe can all comfortably fit in, should not be considered lumped together as one region commercially, but rather 4, or even today I would suggest 5 regions: North Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa, and French and Anglo-West Africa all have potential to be powerhouses of their own. However, at present, there is very little trade even within these groups, and less still between them. With around 1% of growth between English and French-speaking countries in West Africa alone, the total for Africa is 13.1%. However, one should not be too hard on this. This is up massively from 1% in 1990 and 2% in 2000. The growth is exponential, but we've got a long way to go before we can achieve the 60% that Asia achieves, or 70% that Europe achieves. Why is this important? Well, as I said before, it's important for the region to have trade within itself. Interregional trade reduces the reliance on external products, on external food, to import goods and products. It provides better fresh nutrition for the local people, while creating jobs and driving job creation and attracting the root cause of poverty. Is this bad for ports and logistics? No, quite the contrary. the Asian model has shown that as inter-regional trade has developed, this stimulates the bonds between countries, and increases the short sea transits. Today, this trade in Asia is highly containerized, highly digitalized, and a highway of transport between the region. This is what we need to develop in Africa, not just within the various African regions, but around Africa as a whole, to really stimulate growth. So let's have a look where we are right now. Now, if I could show you my slides, you would see that we have a very few links between Africa at the moment. In fact, let's take a container you want to ship from Mombasa in Kenya to Ghana. Anywhere else in the world, one would normally consider straight off, is there a road option or is there a rail option? However, in Africa, these are not options, with the rail showing actually moving backwards since the 1960s. While there are new focus on rail developments, then they're very much local and generally focused on single commodities. There are some very interesting ones, for example, between Mombasa and Nairobi in Kenya, the Nacala corridor in Angola, in Mozambique, sorry, the Lobito Railway in Angola, and various developments around Ghana, being excellent examples. But again, these are single lines, not an integrated network, and we're a long way from that. Roads. Again here, much better potentially a lot of development and not nearly. However, there is far too little investment generally in upkeep, and although roads are cheap to build, they're expensive to maintain. Full node networks actually take a lot of maintenance, and the leaders of countries are not generally committed to maintaining the roads. Not suitable. A classic example is this is the Unity Bridge between Tanzania and Mozambique. While it showed lots of potential during its inauguration in 2010, it lacks the connectivity with only 100 kilometers of road either side of it, and as such has little to no traffic at all, and traffic between the two countries as a result has not been stimulated. We've also recently seen the start of hybrid options, such as the rail runner model, which is an intermodal option using a combination of rail and road without needing hard lines, loading stations, and rail spurs. This is possibly a very good solution for Africa, and we need to look for more low-tech solutions like this to maximize this combination. So let's get back to shipping again. At present, the only real option of moving even between African countries, let alone between African regions. Let's get back to our container in Kenya. Unfortunately, if you wanted to ship this to Tema, the chances are you would have to ship the container backward, or at least eastward, in order to get it to Ghana. And even then, you'd have to transship it twice. The fastest route I could find when I was looking would be to send it to Salala, then Algeciras, before it finally reached Tema, resulting in a transit time of over 30 days. Hence, while I'm on the African continent, I simply cannot compete with suppliers from other areas. West African suppliers, obviously, they should be taking the business anyway. However, at present, a European or Mediterranean supplier has a much better option to get to Ghana, and at the same time, most likely, much cheaper prices as well. It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. With the lack of cargo, there's no hubs. Without the hubs, there's no cargo. Without significant volumes, it thus makes no sense to establish a realistic hub. So cheaper and faster transit times cannot take hold. According to Price Waterhouse recent report, as much ocean transport into West Africa or even East Africa can cost as much as 3.5 times that of any other ocean-going route. To develop competitively, we need to improve the efficiencies of the transport infrastructure to be able to compete. So, looking at the infrastructure then, ports remain the obvious and most key infrastructure. However, with 15 of the 55 countries in Africa being landlocked, we need to look at inland transport, dry ports, and inland ports equally, as well as looking at how to connect them through developing inland infrastructure, but also through developing the process flow of information and processes. Ports are a fairly large, but also very obvious investment, and they're currently very well underway. My colleague, Christina Prieser, will later today explain a lot about the current privatization efforts that are underway and what can be done and how long this takes. The money is there, the efforts are there, the ports are there. This is likely to continue for a long time. In 2017, there were 52 ports around Africa currently being privatized or developed for privatization. And this number is certainly not going to reduce. So really, if we want to look at how to really grow the growth, we need to look at the port processes after discharge from the key inland. The UNCTD, the UNCTAD 2018 report confirmed that port efficiencies are with visible longer dwell times than anywhere else in the world. Delays in vessel traffic, lengthy documentation processes, less containers moves per hour in the ports are critical constraints. The report also indicated inadequate volumes to truly sustain full maritime infrastructure links. The report mentioned, however, most of all for me, the inadequacy of the human resources in the ICT systems to support the efficient and integrated port management systems, for the efficient port administration, professional leadership, guaranteeing for global competitive infrastructure. When considering the different infrastructure developments in Africa, there is still a lot to do. I believe we need to look beyond the quayside, and we need to look at the digital processes to improve the flow. As Jeffrey White, CEO of Agility Africa said, there's no short of funding for infrastructure out there. It's the execution that's the problem, and it's this execution we need to address. Anyone who's worked in Africa trade has heard the dreaded words before, dwell time or demurrage. These are just symptoms of one of the keys of the African development, the ease of doing business. And when drilling down into this, we can see this quite clearly. The World Bank evaluates the ease of doing business in sub-Saharan Africa as one of the weakest performing regions in the world, with an average score of 51.8, well below the global average of 63, and very far from any of the developing countries. In 2019 to 2020, this increased by 0.9. While that's good, it's simply not good enough. Drilling down into these numbers further, we can see that electricity and cross-border trading in particular are very highly rated, with ratings of 146 and 140. That means 3 times the level of other regions. And it is exactly this area that needs to be addressed. Although Africa has more than 7 free trade agreements over the region, and the tripartite agreement brings together over half of Africa, being one of the most ambitious ones to date, with 28 countries looking at it. It's once again an example of good intentions. But with only 8 countries having signed, it's still well short of the 15 required for it to actually come into inception, 5 years after the agreement was initially signed. In fact, in reality, while free trade is being talked about, we're still a long way for it. And customs clearances play a key role in this. These agreements are very good on paper. However, we see far too little trickle down at the border and customs points. How can we address this? Well, I believe the answer to this complex problem is very simple. Digitalization of the processes and the document flow. Port efficiency is a major complaint from various users within Africa, but seldom it's the ships anymore. Yes, sure, there is still congestion and ETA inaccuracies, but through a port community system, this could well be improved as communication, as Amin said, between the ports would link the ports, help them coordinate arrival, movements, and departures. In Hamburg, this has shown massive savings in bunkers, as well as port efficiencies and working time. Another alternative is digitalization of the customs processes, allowing for less checks, a speedier process through, and lessening the potential for corruption. Or finally, a digital booking system to allow trucks to plan better when to arrive and leave ports and avoid the nasty queues, often the whole way through city, congesting entire cities. Digital processes also do not mean less jobs for people, merely a more compliant, visible, and quicker process of procedures for throughput of cargo, allowing for quicker cargo, better trading, as well as a variety of different jobs that can be required with different trading. Existing ports need constant investment in education, in operation, and procedures to improve their performance, and digitalization can go a long way towards aiding this. They need to be able to acquire and use successfully new technology, aiming further to enhance their performance. Here too, there is a lot of tech currently coming out of Africa. Look at the Silicon Valley in Ghana, or the Money app coming out of Uganda, not to mention Kenya, which is a very well-developed software business. But while these international IT industries are servicing the likes of Apple, IBM, and Mercedes internationally, there is not enough investment staying at home. We need to divert some of the exported knowledge, software knowledge, to local use. If we could achieve this, port efficiencies will improve. Existing ports will become more effective, and their performance can improve further. Major ports must take advantage of the current developments. As terrible as it is, Corona adds a further opportunity to catch up. The rise of more regional trade allows Africa to look closer at its trading partners and get in. Inter-Africa trade must be developed. Modern, well-functioning ports must serve as gateways to inland setups with good flowing communications and processes. Port community systems must be developed within regions and across regions. Within ports and across ports to develop better efficiencies between the ports, and multimodal transport must evolve. Thank you very much for listening today.